In a duel with a shore battery, at point-blank range of a mile, U.S. destroyer Corry was sunk. A moment later, the battery that had hit it was itself put out of action by a salvo from the destroyer Fitch.
Columbia News Headquarters in New York, Bob Trout speaking. During the course of the next 30 minutes, we're going to hear invasion news and features from London. We shall hear a report from Washington, and we'll hear from Quentin Reynolds here in New York. But first, to bring you up to date, let's take a quick look at the latest invasion news. This, very briefly, is the story as we have it so far here at our news headquarters. Heavy fighting is continuing on the beaches of Normandy, but we're making good progress and are now reported to be one-third of the way across the Cherbourg Peninsula. Both sides are throwing in more armor, but with the weather growing worse by the hour, air action in the skies over northern France is virtually at a standstill. We've sunk at least one German destroyer off the Brittany Peninsula, and earlier this evening we were told of the arrival in London of General Marshall, Admiral King, and General Arnold, our American Army, Navy, and Air Force commanders. That, briefly, is the news picture at the moment. And now we've been told that our correspondent in London, Edward R. Murrow, is ready to tell us more of the latest invasion news and some features also. So now we take you to London. Edward R. Murrow reporting.
This is London. Sitting here in our studio is the commanding officer of the first American destroyer to be lost in the invasion of Europe. He is a 33-year-old lieutenant commander. I can't tell you his name or the name of his ship. But it would probably be all right to say he was named after a famous American naval officer. Here is his story.
It was a very slow trip over. So slow, in fact, that one of my friends passing by asked me if I thought I'd ever get there. When we finally did get there, we saw the greatest pyrotechnic display I've ever seen or probably ever shall see. The red and green stars reached hundreds of feet high. That was probably the German signal that the invasion was on. We were just one of a group of destroyers. Our job was to bombard enemy machine gun nests and artillery emplacements, menacing the landing of our troops. We were about 4,000 yards offshore when the coastal batteries opened up. The destroyer immediately ahead of us came under fire, but she moved on to her station, and then the guns were ranged on us. It was about an hour before H hour. The first shell splashes were short. Waves of bombers were overhead. One was blazing with flame, but maintained perfect formation. Then it blew up in a great orange flame, while the rest of her teammates dropped hundreds of tons of bombs on the German beach defenses nearby. We started counter-battery fire, ranging on the flashes of the German guns ashore. We were firing salvos, and the Germans were firing back.
How fast were you going?
Very slow. We were taking as much evasive action as we could. But we had to stay within our prescribed area, for it was our job to support the troops about to go ashore.
What happened next?
We silenced them and began to pound our assigned targets, which were German pillboxes and machine gun positions. We eliminated a couple of them, and then another battery opened fire on us. The visibility was improving, which meant that we would have a better chance to get him, and that he would have a better chance to get us. We increased our rate of fire. The empty powder tank came pouring out of turret. We exchanged fire for about 10 minutes, pouring it on the shore batteries, and then we were hit. 3 large projectiles hit us almost simultaneously. I rang for full speed, gave a hard right rudder to clear the area, to assess damage, stop leaks, and put out fires before returning. The rudder jammed, the ship speeded up, and began going in circles.
Then what happened?
All communications failed, the lights went out, and I set the officers and men aft to steer by hand. We were in danger of going aground on the reef. They got her headed to seaward, and then we lost all steam, and the engine stopped. I ordered the ship's power boats put over to pull us clear of the area.
How long did that take?
For about 5 minutes. But before they could start towing, I had to order abandoned ship. The main deck was awash due to the rapidity of the flooding of all the engineering spaces except one. We got away in good order, placing the wounded in boats. When all was clear, I stepped into the water, but the current kept sweeping the swimmers around the ship, during which time they were subjected to an endless shelling, which further pitiably increased our losses. The survivors were picked up in less than 2 hours by sister destroyers.
How was the discipline, Commander?
I'm very proud of the way in which everyone kept calm and cheerful against the adversity of the extremely cold water and the shelling, but our losses were moderate.
I hope you get another ship soon.
Well, so do I.
Thank you very much indeed, Commander, for coming along here in the early hours of the morning to talk to us.
In a duel with a shore battery, at point-blank range of a mile, U.S. destroyer Corry was sunk. A moment later, the battery that had hit it was itself put out of action by a salvo from the destroyer Fitch.